Hello and welcome again to another episode of One Starfish, where our mission is to help change the world one starfish or one person at a time. As always, make sure to rate, review, subscribe. I appreciate the shares. I appreciate the comebacks and people telling what they've got out of these messages. So keep those coming. I'm excited for our guest today. Cindy and I just met, but she has little mini horses, so we're in the horsey world together. And we're going to get into that. She ran a business of her own, started a business, ran a business for over 20 years in the boutique benefit industry, and then sold that, and then went into farming and ranching, which is completely different. And her book is Finding Your Next. We'll have all of those information in the show notes for sure, but I'm excited to get into your story. Thanks for being on, Cindy.
It's totally my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, let's get into things. Let's go back to why you started a business in the first place, because entrepreneurship is a big thing on this show and a big thing in my world, and I love it. So, what got you into even running that business, and how did that, where did that come from, first of all?
I think I started the business like many people start businesses, which is I identified a problem, and it was a personal problem.
Hmm.
I was a young mom. I was married to a family practice doc who, I was working, but it was a time where, when you have young children and sometimes they get sick and they can't go to daycare, or then they grow up and they can't go to school. Things happen, and there are breakdowns in the routine that you have and the setup that you have with your family. And when that happens, it throws your life into sort of a chaotic place. And I realized I'm not alone here. And my job was not quite as important as we used to joke that he would be saving lives as a doctor. And I was, in administration. So it was who's going to stay home? It's going to be me. But my job was important. So I decided to start my own company after finding out that this problem was not being solved. And what do you do? Where do you go? So I realized that there was a situation out there where there weren't a lot of services to back people up when they had breakdowns in their ongoing care. Whether or not kids are in school, or your mom or your dad fall and break a hip, you go to the hospital, but then what? You need somebody to come in and take care of them because you've got responsibilities that you need to be able to take care of and maintain. And so I started a company that was all about backing people up when they had breakdowns in their care and ended up running it for 20 years and developing a nationwide network and selling it to major corporations who offered the benefit to their employees. And it filled a niche.
That's cool. When you started your business, what were some of the obstacles you overcame then? Like, was everyone like, oh my gosh, that sounds super supportive? I mean, you're building a business, you have kids. Did you get a lot of and that was 20 years ago plus,
Yeah.
did you
Oh,
get a lot of backlash where people are like, what are you doing? Like, just stay home, be a little housewife and look after your kids.
absolutely. Yeah. And, a woman starting a business that has to do with taking care of families. I mean, a little cliche. But it was, some of the challenges that I had was just learning how to lead, learning how to run a business. I had a master's degree in social work, ironically. Now I'm a coach and I use it all the time. But to use that to go into business, I I kind of had a little bit of imposter syndrome. I will admit that not having a master's degree in business or having run businesses before and really wondering, am I qualified? Can I do this?
Mm,
And I'll tell you, the master's in social work ended up being a dream because when you run a business, it's all about people. At the end of the day, no matter what we do, it's about people
mm.
and it's about leadership. And it's about inspiring and developing a vision for what you want to do. And that I was able to do. And that was what I needed to lean into. And if you're a really good leader, you surround yourself with amazing people who complement what you do and what you can't do. And that also was something that I had to learn how to do because I think a lot of entrepreneurs feel like we have to do everything
Mm.
to run the business. And that's, if you want to stay small, absolutely, and keep it close to the chest, fine. But if you want to scale a business and grow a business, it can't all be about you.
So what were some things that got you out of the imposter syndrome? How did you, because I think that's a very common thing for women for sure, men too, I would say.
Oh,
But
yeah.
what were some things that got you out of that?
I think how to learning how to sell and winning a few contracts was a big confidence booster when you start to actually do the business that you set out to do. And I think making a few really good hires and learning how to collaborate with others. And, I think as a leader, um, I never thought of myself as a boss. I thought of myself as a leader. And, um, and I think gaining the confidence in that when people would turn to me and say, I get it. I know what we're doing. I'm excited about what we're doing. I started to build up a certain amount of confidence of, hey, I think I know what I'm doing here. And it was certainly an evolution. And I certainly needed to grow and learn along the way. And I made lots and lots and lots of mistakes. Absolutely made tons of mistakes. And there are some that I look back and just, it's the big, palm to the forehead move where you just go, I can't believe I did that. But how else do you learn? And how else do you grow? And how else do you evolve? And how else do you do that with others? So I think that's the thing to get out of the way of feeling like you're an imposter is at the heart of that is feeling like we have to know it all and feel like we have to be perfect. And once you realize that that's not really the intent, the goal, or the mission there, I think you can start to step into who you really are and lead.
That's so good. I love that. What got you going on the days? I mean, obviously your husband was supportive, I'm guessing. Was
Yeah,
okay, good.
yeah,
So
oh,
you had one
totally.
person in your circle, so that's good. That was supportive. What
Yeah,
kept you going on the days like as you were failing forward basically? What
yeah,
and what could someone take that's tangible? Because I think a lot of people get started and they quit way too soon. So
yeah.
what are some tangible tips that could inspire someone if they're getting started? They're going through all that hard times, they're making all the mistakes, they're going, maybe this isn't for me. What motivated you to keep going even after all these mistakes and all these things?
Again, surrounding yourself with people who really are really good, probably better than you. In certain parts of the business. I was very fortunate. I had an entrepreneurial father who was my mentor.
Mm,
And I think was one of the reasons I ended up going into coaching after I got on the other side of my business experience into this new life that I live, is the recognition that running a company, being a CEO, leading others is actually quite lonely and really difficult to do on your own. And you need somebody else to talk to. So, all my clients are responsible for businesses and leading others because who the heck do they talk to? I
mhm,
had someone to talk to. And when my dad passed, I hired a coach because I realized how important it was to have an objective viewpoint, but with somebody who always had your best interest in mind.
mm,
Because some of the decisions you have to make are difficult, but they're yours alone to make. And to have that objective outside ear and that voice, that someone else to talk it through is crucial, just crucial.
mm. I love
And
that.
they need to be a cheerleader too, to get you through those really tough moments where you're like, I need to give up. And they're like, well, you're really good at this. So maybe you want to stick with it. That's also what you need. It's people on your side.
Yeah, who do you surround yourself with? I love that. Very, very good. And then so then we went and we ran this business and we sold this business. And now, this is the whole premise of your book and what you're doing. Tell us a little bit about the transition and why and where it's going. And yeah, tell us a little bit about the everything going on now.
Well, I am one of those fortunate ones who was able to sell their business, which was a gas, by the way, to be able to, after 20 some odd years of running a business, to be able to show someone else that it had value and to be told that it had value. So that was an awesome experience and probably an entirely new and other podcast to do with you later on. But
Cool.
the coming out on the other side of that was really interesting because I was in my mid 50s and and I wasn't done, but I knew I didn't want to start another business. And I knew I didn't really want to go work for anybody else. And when you think about it, those are kind of your two options at the end of the that rainbow there, right? So I came up with this idea that, well, if I'm not doing those two things, I guess I'm retiring. Because what else do you say? But every time I referred to retiring, I always put air quotes around it because it was like retiring wasn't real.
Mhm.
And I knew I wasn't done. And it's sort of this loaded thing of retiring, but I had nothing else to say. But it was a fascinating and wonderful time because I had the opportunity to really do something new and something different. And I sort of tapped into an old dream that I had about finding some land and trying to figure out how to live a sustainable life, if you will. Kind of the old farming, ranching vision of I'm going to go and I'm going to, bake pies and I'm going to grow my own food and I'm going to raise some animals. And I got to tell you, I'm a nice suburban girl who had never done anything like that before. So it was tapping into something very, very different and aspirational and inspirational for myself. And there was a place in Southwest Colorado where I had gone when I was 19 years old, when I first moved to Colorado. And I'd fallen in love with these mountains down here. And I sort of remembered it and went on a quest to look for a piece of property with magnificent views where I could create and design a new lifestyle for myself based on where I was in life, what I wanted to do, not what other people were telling me to do, not what I should do, but really what was important to me about how I wanted to live. And that was the start of this quest I had for finding my next.
Wow. And then you found the place. Tell us
I
more
found
about
the
that. You found
place.
the place and you started to learn how to have animals and run a farm and all the things. It's a
I
lot of work.
did. I
Um,
did. And it was, I sort of stood on this property. The property that I found was magnificent, but it was kind of pasture. There was nothing. There was nothing on the 35 acres of this property. So it wasn't like a big backyard. This is land. It's still considered small land as big ranchers go, but I wasn't looking to earn a living from running, cattle herds or horse herds. I was creating a different kind of lifestyle. And so it was not quite a hobby, but not really that living off the land, homesteading in I still like to go to Target and the grocery store. Let's just face it. I
yeah.
like I like comforts and I like to work physically, but not all that hard. So it needed to be this blend and this new design of how do I do it and do it as a mid 50s woman with a new partner in life and figure out how to do that. So we found this land and started to really over time, we started small. We got chickens to begin with. So I had to build a house, by the way, which is really a new experience. And I live 6 hour drive from my friends and my family. So had to build a little bit of a extended residential a guest house along with the main house because people don't drop by for dinner. They come for a few days. So I needed to be able to put people up and I needed to try to figure out, what is this life that we wanted to live? So the idea of bringing on animals was an evolutionary kind of a thing. You start small. We got chickens. Had to figure out what that was about. These little dinosaurs running around your property. You have to figure that out. Then we got cows. And of course, I got beautiful cows because and friendly cows because I don't know anything about cows and I had to learn how to do that. And we have some very funny stories in the book about chasing cows and learning about fencing and things you just don't think you're going to be talking about for a while. Like I can have now a really good conversation about fencing and irrigation and farm equipment. Like, who the heck am I now? And then we built a barn. And because I didn't know how to build a barn, and didn't know anything about that sort of thing, I started where I knew to start, which was Pinterest, and found really nice designs for barns, and then went and found a contractor and talked to some local farmers about if you could do it again, how would you build your barn? And got some great practice wisdom and designed a barn. Who the heck? And got some miniature horses and donkeys because I'm not really a horse woman like you are, and I don't raise them and I don't really ride them, but I like to pet them and I love the look of them. So everything was designed heavily on cuteness factor. So, small goats, really cute pigs. There is a thing called a cute pig, and, and manageable. And so it was really about making it up to fit who we are versus how you're supposed to or you should do things,
Hmm.
if that makes sense.
Totally makes sense. That's awesome. So tell us a little bit. I know you do coaching, so tell us a little bit about, who do you look for? Who do you like to coach? And the purpose of the book, because I love how you basically redesigned your life. Which is really scary for a lot of people. Even me listening to it, I'm like, what would I do if I resigned my life? Would I want a little farm? No, don't want that. I know that's a lot of work. So, because I had a real farm and that was a lot of work.
It's a
Um,
lot of work.
so I know that, but it's really cool. So tell us a little bit about, your coaching and who you're looking for and, how can you help people? I love that, like transition their life from like all the different transitions you've actually had in your life. It's not even just the last one. It's just like you've done a few transitions.
Absolutely. And I think that's the whole point of finding your next. And next is NXT because I think there needs to be a different emphasis on next. And I think that we do those nexts quite often in our lives. We have small ones, we have medium-sized steps and changes and evolutions and transitions and transformations. Mine was a bit of a transformation at that phase of my life. But even writing the book for myself was finding my next, and going through that because I'd never done that before. So anytime you enter into a change, it's really a next. So that's where the coaching came in. And that's where the book came from, was using my sort of experiences of going through a major transformation to highlight and illustrate the process that you go through. And that's what I coach on. So I coach people on business because I have a lot of business experience. And I coach them on leadership. So if somebody is running a business and learning how to lead or wants to lead or needs support in leading, I coach people on that. And, sometimes people ask me, are you a business coach or a life coach? And the answer is, well, yes. Because why do we think we have to separate the two? Working is a part of living.
Mhm.
So they are interconnected. So I coach in an interconnected way, in a holistic way for people who are working or people who are trying to figure out what is next. And after years of coaching from the ranch and developing the ranch, was really looking for a way to merge the two. So I have my ongoing coaching clients who are usually, leaders in business. And then I developed a coaching program that I do at the ranch where people come to the ranch, which is called CC Blue. And it's in the book as how we named the ranch and how the ranch was evolved and developed and designed. And so people come here. But I needed to do it a little bit differently because that's how I roll. And instead of having groups come to the ranch, I have individuals, couples, or business partners come to the ranch. But I only do coaching immersion sessions for about 2.5 days with them alone. So I don't have 6 couples come at a time. I have one couple come at a time, one set of business partners come at a time, or one client individual come at a time. So we could really focus on what's next for them. So it might be a couple who are retiring. It might be a couple who are looking to make a big transition in their lives and they need alignment. It might be an individual who finds themselves after 20 years of working in one way, one field, one industry, saying, I want to know what's next. I want to figure out how to redesign my life. Or it might be business partners who really need to get alignment to figure out what's next for their business and be able to work through that. So they come here and we pamper them and they get to have this beautiful environment and we get to sit and talk just about them. So it's awesome and it fills me up because that's my sweet spot. I love this kind of work. Love it.
That's so awesome. I love it. So guys, if you're listening to this and you're like, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm ready for next, reach out definitely to Cindy, read her book. If nothing else, reach out, maybe for some coaching or be able to go down to her farm ranch establishment, whatever we want to call it. It looks beautiful. The
Thank you.
backdrop is beautiful through the windows. If you guys aren't watching this on YouTube, watch it. It's a beautiful, beautiful place. I can tell already. So definitely reach out. And yeah, in wrapping up, I always ask 3 final questions and then anything we didn't touch on that you think would be really impactful for our listeners. So first and final question is if someone is looking for their purpose, what's one sentence you would say that could help them find it?
One sentence to help them find that. Um, I think the sentence would be change is actually a normal part of our lives. We treat it as if it's something different and something outside of the norm that we have to tackle. But I think a change of perspective to embracing change as a normal part of life relieves us of some of the stress and the angst that comes with it.
So good. Number 2, what's a favorite quote and why?
The guy, Mark Blucas, who was Riley Finn on Buffy the Vampire Slayer. But the quote is, if your heart, head, and gut are telling you the same thing, then you owe yourself to chase it. And I love that because there's a whole chapter in my book about that, because that if you know your heart and your head and your gut are all aligned, man, go for it. Go for it.
So good. Third and final question. What's one word or sentence you want on your gravestone?
She loved finding her next.
That's good. I love it. So you run into someone in the coffee shop, they've listened to this, they're working on finding their next. What's something we didn't touch on that you think would be really impactful for our listeners?
Well, I think we need to understand that anytime we enter into a change to find your next, we ask ourselves, what's next? One of the things that gets in our way is that we have our own self-protectors, our own blockers that are set up to really help us think about all sides of the story and whether or not we need to move forward. Sometimes those can paralyze us. So we need to understand that fear is also a normal part. Fear of the unknown, fear of failure sometimes gets in our way, sometimes wants to stop us a little bit more than it should. So we just need to be aware that there are ways that we like to self-protect, but sometimes those self-protections can be blockers and we need to push them out of the way so we can move forward.
I love that. That's awesome. Guys, I know you're going to share this. Make sure, like I said before, share it, rate, review, subscribe. Let's go out there. If we can change one life or one starfish at a time, together, we can change the world. Thanks for being on, Cindy.
Thank you so much. This was fun.